Approval.
So our mission today is, well, to pull back the layers of anathema. We're tracing its surprising journey from ancient origins through its profound religious impact, and then ultimately to how it's used or maybe misused in our modern world.
Exactly.
By the end of this deep dive, you'll have a truly informed understanding of this powerful term and hopefully a few aha moments about language, belief, and what it even means to be set apart.
Right. Let's start at the very beginning, the etymology.
Yeah.
The word anathema derives from the ancient Greek term anathema. That's A-N-A-T-H-E-M-A.
Anathema. Got it.
And it originally meant an offering or something dedicated. Simple as that.
An offering.
Yeah. It came from the verb anathemi, which means to offer up or to set up. So in its earliest sense, it was quite neutral, often just referring to objects offered to deities in a temple.
Wow. Okay. So anathema was initially neutral, maybe even positive sometimes.
Pretty much, yeah.
How on earth did something so, benign take on such a dramatically negative meaning? That's a huge shift.
It is. And the shift really began with the translation process, specifically translating the Hebrew word cherem, that's C-H-E-R-E-M, into Greek for the Old Testament.
The Septuagint.
Exactly, for the Septuagint. Now, cherem itself had this kind of dual meaning.
Okay.
On one hand, it could mean something set apart for divine use, considered most holy unto the Lord, like you see in Leviticus.
Right, set apart for God.
But, and this is the crucial part, it also referred to things dedicated to destruction in the Lord's name.
Like enemy towns?
Enemy towns, weapons, things considered unclean, or spoils of religious war that had to be destroyed. Think Numbers 21, for instance.
So that semantic leap from sacred offering to something designated for destruction, it sounds like that destruction side started to dominate the meaning. What really drove that?
Precisely. Because these enemy objects dedicated to destruction were seen as reviled, unholy, cursed, the meaning of anathema, when used to translate cherem, gradually shifted. A thing devoted started to lean towards a thing devoted to evil or just simply a curse.
I see.
It laid the groundwork for the much more severe interpretations that came later. The objects or people under cherem weren't just set aside, they were set aside from God or set aside for destruction.
That makes sense. And this historical development, this shift, it brings us directly to the New Testament, doesn't it? Where the Apostle Paul uses the word, pretty intensely.
And absolutely, yes. In the New Testament, especially in St. Paul's letters, anathema picks up this really sharp negative meaning. It signifies a curse, often linked to the forced expulsion of someone from the Christian community.
Right.
A really famous example is in Galatians 1, verses 8 and 9, where Paul basically says, "But even if we or an angel from heaven should preach to you a gospel contrary to the one we preach to you, let him be anathema."
Wow, strong words.
Very strong. It reflects the disfavor of God, applying both to the sentence itself and, the person or thing receiving that sentence. You also see it in 1 Corinthians with anathema maranatha, implying judgment.
So this wasn't just a biblical idea floating around. It started to take shape in actual church law and practice. How did anathema become formalized?
It did, and quite quickly, really. From the time of the apostles onwards, anathema evolved to mean a form of extreme religious sanction, specifically excommunication.
Excommunication itself.
The most severe form, yes. The earliest recorded instance of its formal use we know of is in the canons of the Synod of Elvira. That was an early Christian council in Spain around 306 CE.
306 CE, okay.
And other councils followed suit, like the Synod of Gangra. By the 5th century, they even made a formal distinction.
Between what?
Between anathema, which was this complete, total, collectively approved separation from the church, and a sort of small excommunication, aphorismos in Greek.
Aphorismos?
Yeah, which was more like a temporary suspension, like being barred from taking the Eucharist, but you were still technically a member of the church. Anathema was the final cut.
That's a huge distinction. So given this, incredibly powerful tool, how did different branches of Christianity use it, particularly, say, Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy? Did they see eye to eye on this?
Well, there were similarities, but also key differences in emphasis and practice. In the Catholic context, anathema really became the formal way the church condemned heresy.
Like a legal declaration almost.
In a way, yes. Think about the big ecumenical councils, like the Council of Nicaea back in 325 CE.
Right, dealing with Arianism.
Exactly. They explicitly pronounced anathemas against doctrines that, in their view, distorted Christ's divinity, like those of Arius. It was about protecting doctrinal truth, preserving the unity of faith.
And later councils, too.
Oh, yes. Fast forward to the Council of Trent in the 16th century, responding to the Protestant Reformation. That council issued numerous anathemas against anyone denying the Church's defined doctrines. It really emphasized that you had to fully accept all its teachings to remain in communion.
So for Catholicism, a key tool for defining doctrine and enforcing unity. What about the Eastern Orthodox Church? How did they view this powerful concept? Was their application different?
It was, and still is, somewhat different. When we look at the Eastern Orthodox Church, they make a very important distinction between epithemia, which are penances, things like temporary excommunication, where a person still remains an Orthodox Christian but maybe has restricted participation for a time, and anathema. For them, anathema means the person is considered completely torn from the Church, cut off.
Completely torn off. That sounds final.
Well, not absolutely final in the sense of eternal damnation. They're very clear that God alone judges that, and repentance is always possible right up until death.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So what's the purpose then?
It's seen as twofold, really. First, to warn the person condemned, hoping to shock them into repentance, and second, to warn others away from the same error. It's considered a very painful, serious, but potentially healing remedy. In a way.
Interesting. And they even have a specific annual event tied to this, don't they, where anathemas are publicly mentioned. That sounds like quite a potent tradition.
They certainly do. It happens on the first Sunday of Great Lent, which is known as the Sunday of Orthodoxy.
The Sunday of Orthodoxy.
Yes. And during the service, the rite of orthodoxy, anathemas, are publicly pronounced against a whole list of historical heresies.
Wow.
It commemorates orthodoxy's victory over iconoclasm back at the Council of Constantinople in 843 CE. They actually read out the Synodicon, which is a decree from that council, every year.
So it's a very public reinforcement of dogma.
Absolutely. A solemn annual reminder of what the Church defines as fundamentally outside its core beliefs.
Okay, so let's bring this into the present day. Has the formal ecclesiastical use of anathema softened over time, particularly within institutions like the Catholic Church?
Yes, significantly, especially since the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s.
How so?
Well, the Catholic Church has largely toned down its use of the actual term anathema in official declarations. For instance, if you look at the 1983 Code of Canon Law, which is the one currently in force, the word anathema just isn't there explicitly anymore.
Really?
The term itself, yes, from the main body of the law code. And those rather dramatic old ceremonies sometimes associated with it, you know, the whole bell book and candle thing.
I've heard of that.
Those are also no longer mentioned in the revised official liturgical books, like the Pontifica Romanum. It definitely feels less severe, less common in official pronouncements now.
It certainly sounds less theatrical. But, okay, the word itself hasn't vanished from our language, has it?
Not at all.
It still packs a punch, maybe even more so now in secular context. How do we see anathema used outside of formal church settings today?
Oh, absolutely. That's probably where most people encounter it now. The most common modern usage of anathema is just in everyday secular language. Meaning someone or something intensely disliked or loathed, utterly detested.
Okay.
It can also mean like a vigorous denunciation or even just informally a curse. You'll often hear it used to describe something that is fundamentally opposed to an idea or a principle.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Someone might say, the very idea of censorship is anathema to the principles of free speech.
Right, meaning it's completely repellent, fundamentally incompatible.
Exactly. And linguistically, it usually functions as a mass noun, so you typically say, that is anathema to me, not, that is an anathema to me.
Got it. So it's really moved beyond just formal church decrees to describe this kind of irreconcilable opposition in all sorts of areas, politics, philosophy, personal taste even.
Pretty much.
But is there ever maybe a subtle hint of that original set apart, meaning still lingering, even when we use it just to mean intense dislike? Or is it purely negative now?
That's a really insightful question. I think while it's definitely overwhelmingly negative in modern use, that underlying sense of being set apart, you know, cast out, designated as utterly unacceptable, fundamentally opposed, I think that still resonates. It's such a strong word because it implies something so abhorrent that it's almost, well, ritually banished from acceptance.
Like it can't even be in the same category.
Exactly. So it's a journey, from a neutral offering to a formal ecclesiastical ban, and now to this descriptor of intense secular hatred. It really shows how language shifts and reflects these deep societal and cultural changes over time.
Absolutely fascinating. So, okay, for you, the listener, think about all this.
Yeah.
This deep dive isn't just a history lesson about one word. What's the real world relevance here? What's the practical takeaway from understanding anathema today, especially how we use language or think about society?
Well, I think understanding anathema really shines a light on how language itself can be, and has been, wielded as a powerful tool. A tool for social exclusion or inclusion.
How do you mean?
It shows us the deep historical roots of even some contemporary phenomena. Things like maybe cancel culture or public shaming.
Ah, interesting connection.
It prompts us, or should prompt us, to look at the often unseen power dynamics that are embedded in the words we use, the judgments we make, the things we declare totally unacceptable.
That's a really crucial point. It's not just about the word itself, but the act of declaring something or someone anathema. What else can we learn from this history, perhaps about how we navigate strong disagreements today?
Well, it definitely challenges us to look beyond just the surface disagreement, doesn't it? To try and understand the underlying principles or beliefs that lead people or entire groups to declare something utterly incompatible with their worldview.
Right, to understand the why.
Exactly. It encourages a deeper discernment, maybe, of what we ourselves consider fundamentally non-negotiable, what our anathemas are, and critically why we hold those views so strongly.
And what about the idea of reconciliation? That seems almost counterintuitive given how harsh anathema sounds, especially historically.
It does seem counterintuitive, but it's vital. Crucially, while anathema historically meant separation, a harsh break.
Yeah.
In many religious traditions, the ultimate stated goal, at least ideally, was often eventual reconciliation, the restoration of communion, bringing the person back into the fold after repentance.
So even in that severity, there was a path back.
Potentially, yes. And I think that offers a powerful lesson for us today. Even when we face really strong disagreements, conflicts, things that feel like fundamental opposition, that historical context reminds us that pursuing forgiveness, mercy, reconciliation in our own relationships in society, it remains a really vital, maybe even charitable goal, even when we're confronting things and we personally find, well, anathema.
That's a really thoughtful point. We've certainly journeyed through millennia today, haven't we? From ancient Greek offerings, pretty neutral, to these formal, heavy church pronouncements, and finally landing on modern expressions of just utter detestation. The word anathema is such a powerful testament to how language evolves, how it reflects our core human experiences, defining what's sacred, what's unacceptable, what's utterly opposed to our values.
Absolutely. Understanding anathema isn't just about expanding your vocabulary, is it? It's about appreciating these deep historical currents that shape how we think about truth, community, belonging, and, yes, separation, whether that's in a religious or a purely secular way.
So, as you, the listener, reflect on this deep dive, here's something to maybe mull over. In our world today, which often feels increasingly polarized, where lines are drawn so sharply and beliefs clash so fiercely, what anathemas are we as individuals, maybe as a society, tacitly pronouncing? Through our words, our actions, maybe even our silences. And what might the long-term implications of those anathemas be for unity, for understanding, and maybe, ultimately, for that possibility of reconciliation we just talked about?